Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvitesa Shunyavadi Paskatya Desitarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Brahmadakacharya Asadhara Satushi Shiman His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivedanta Swaraj Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hariva Slava Zabrani Bhakta Slava Shri Guru Shri Gurangi Om Agyanatvanandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vasakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Trivyastra Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavad-gita as it is, Chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness, text number 5 to 8, is that what it is? 8 to 9. Naiva kinchit karomiti yuktamandite tattvavid pashan shrinvan sprishan jigran Ashnan gachan swapan swasan Pralapan Vishijan Grinan Unimishan Nimishanapi Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Daryan Naiva Kinchit Karomiti Yuktamanyate Tattvavid Pashan Srinvan Srishanjigran Ashnangachan Swapan Shwasan Pralapan Vishijan Grinan Unmishan Nimishanapi Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Daryan Pralapan Vishijangrinan Umishan Nimishanapi Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Daryan Naiva Kinchit Karomiti Yuktamanyate Tattvavid Pashan Shinvan Srishanjigran Swapan Shwasan Pralapan Vishijangrinan Umishan Nimishanapi Indriyarteshu Vartanta iti Daryan Never. Eva, certainly. Kinchit, anything. Karomi, I do. Iti, thus. Yukta, engaged in the divine consciousness. Manyeta, thinks. Tattvavit, one who knows the truth. Pashan, seeing. Shrindvan, hearing. Sprishan, touching. Jigran, smelling. Pashan, seeing. Actually, let's start with Pashan. Pashan, seeing. Shrindvan, hearing. Sprishan, touching. Jigran, smelling. Ashnan, eating. Gachan, going. Swapan, dreaming. Shwasan, breathing. Pralapan, talking. Vishrijan, giving up. Grinan, accepting. Unmishan, opening. Nimishan, a lot of shans here. Closing. Api, in spite of. Indriyani, the senses. Indriya arteshu, in sense gratification. Vardante, let them be so engaged. Iti, thus. Daryan, considering. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhagavad-gita Swami Srila Prabhupada. Person in the divine consciousness, engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, breathing, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while engaged in speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness is pure in his existence. Consequently, he has nothing to do with any work depends upon the 5 immediate and remote causes: the doer, the work, the situation, the endeavor, and fortune. This is because he is engaged in the loving transcendental service of Krishna. Though he appears to be acting with his body and senses, he is always conscious of his actual position, which is spiritual engagement. In material consciousness, the senser is engaged in sense gratification, but in Krishna consciousness, the senser is engaged in the satisfaction of Krishna's senses. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is always free, even though he appears to be engaged in the affairs of the senses. Activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge, whereas moving, speaking, evacuating, etc. are actions of the senses meant for work. Krishna conscious person is never affected by the actions of the senses. He cannot perform any act except in the service of the Lord, because he knows that he is the eternal servitor of the Lord. Naiva kinchit karomiti yuktamanyate tattvavet pashan srinvan srishandre gran ashnanga chansvapan swasan pralapan vrishri jangrinan umishanamishanapi injarndirateshu vartanta iti dariyan. Person in the divine consciousness, though engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while engaged in speaking, evacuating, receiving or opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and that he is aloof from them. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Bhaskadyade Siddharne. This is a progression of consciousness, beginning with the verse Yoga Yukta Vishuddhatma Vijitatma Jitendriya Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma Korvan Napni Lipite. The one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone and everyone is dear to him. Though he's working, such a person is never entangled. Due to the influence of the illusory energy, it's almost impossible for the soul to understand what the verse Naiva Kinchit Karomiti, that at no time am I doing anything. Under the influence of the false ego, we think we're doing everything. At least everything that the body is doing, we think we're the sole and only doer. Because, as it says, Adishtanam tata karta karnam cha pritag vedan vivitas cha pritag chesta daivam chaivatma panchamam. That there are 4 kinds of factors in the accomplishment of any kind of work, beginning with adishtanam, the body. Obviously, we couldn't do very much without our body, except for horned people in our subtle body. But we need a gross body to do something. Tata karta. And then the karta means the doer, is the soul. But what the soul is doing is desiring. Just by desiring, nothing happens. For instance, let's all desire it to float up to the top of the ceiling right now. Everyone desire that, please? Not much progress. Maybe you didn't desire hard enough. Really get into it. I really want to float up. Because we're only one factor. Naiva adishtanam tata karta karnam. We need senses also. Now, to float up to the ceiling, we'd probably be better off having the body of a bird to do that. Because the bird can utilize the air much better than we can in order to fly. Our wings are not so adapted to flying so far. Of course, if you go real fast, probably knock off the top of the water, that's all. Karnam cha pritag chesta. And then there is the junction between the false ego and the soul. In other words, the soul has to become influenced by the false ego in order to believe he's doing something. And the last one is daivam. Adishtanam tata karta karanam cha pritag vidan vivitas chitad chesta daivam chaivatma panchamam. Daiva, Krishna, who is Paramatma in the heart, and he's controlling material nature, ordering it to make different forms in the material world to fulfill the desires and the desert of the living entities. So in inconceivable potency of Krishna, everything goes on, but the material world is a combination of the living entity's desires, his deserts, and Paramatma's arrangements. Now he's supposed to be unattached to everything that's going on. He says that he says he's creating everything in the material world. Sarvabhutani kontiya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpasheya punastani kalpado vishrijamyaham bhutagramam sevayam bhutva praliyate radriyagame visharparta pravanyuhar agame. That he's creating everything, then he's annihilating everything again and again, and Nichamantani karmani nibandhanti dhananjaya udasinadvarasinama saktam teshu karmasu. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me, I'm ever detached, seated as though neutral. In other words, inconceivably, Krishna is neutral to everything that's going on. For him, as Paramatma, he's simply sensing the desires of living entities, just like one can understand the flavor of a flower by smelling it, and then arranging through his energies, the material energy or the spiritual energy, the activities of this body. And the living entity gets the result, either enlightenment, or anxiety, or bewilderment, or transcendental pleasure, depending upon the desire. And the desires depend upon whether we have some plan for this body in order for enjoyment in the three modes, or we have plans to utilize this body in Krishna's service. Now the more we utilize it in Krishna's service, of course, as we know, the more we become conscious of Krishna, then the more everything is revealed, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Yanena tutad agyanam yesham nashitam atmanaha tesham adityavargyanam prakashiti tatvaram. When, however, one is enlightened with the knowledge by which nescience is destroyed, then his knowledge reveals everything, just like the sun lights up everything in the daytime. So first, tad buddhiyas, tad atmanas, tad nishtas, tad parayanaha, gachatnyapana avritim, gyananiduta kalmasha. One's intelligence, one's mind, one's faith, one's refuge is all fixed in the Supreme. Then one becomes fully cleansed of all misgivings through complete knowledge. Thus proceeds straight on the path of liberation. So our first business is to utilize our intelligence in Krishna's service. And how do we do that? How do we use our intelligence in Krishna's service? How do we know if we even have any intelligence? How do we know if we're using in Krishna's service? Yeah. Real intelligence is Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshana. The humble sages, by virtue of true knowledge, see with the equal vision the learned and gentle Brahmin, the cow, the elephant, the dog, and the dog eater. Vidya Vinaya Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastini Shuni Chaiva Swapakecha Pandita Samadarshanaha. So, real intelligence is to see how Krishna is situated everywhere and everything is meant for his service, and his service is to awaken the living entities as to their original relation with Krishna. That's called intelligence. Without that intelligence, then one is not really seeing what is taking place, although they may try. Does anyone know that verse? Itanto yoginas china pashantyatmadyatmana itanto yoginas chainam patantyat Itanto yoginas chainam pashant yatman yavastitam itanto vyakritatmano naiva pashant yachetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalist situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, although those whose minds are not so developed and are not situated in self-realization cannot see what's taking place. So the seeing, pashanti, this is essential for progress in devotional service, see through the eyes of the scripture. As Kshetram, Kshetraya, Jnanam, Antara, Jnanajakshusha, Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha, Ye Vidur Yanti Te Para, Kshetra, Kshetragaya, Jnanam, Antara, Jnana-chakshusha. See with the eyes of knowledge. Now with our present eyes, we look in the mirror, we think we're seeing ourselves. But which self? All our bodies are changing all the time. So it's an illusion to think we're seeing ourselves when we look in the mirror. We're seeing just a reflection of the self in the form of one's conditioned nature. And that will change. But Kshetragya Jnanam Antara Jnana Chakshusha. That one can see both the soul and the super soul. Kshetragya Jnanam, both the body and the owner of the body, with knowledge. Antara Jnana Chakshusha. Before Antara Jnana Chakshusha. That's the end of the chapter. End of the 13th chapter. Antara, the difference between the body and the owners of the body. Kshetragyanam jnanam, kshetragyana evam, antara jnana chakshusha. One who can see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body and the owners of the body, bhuta prakriti moksham cha, and knows the process of liberation from the material energy, ye vidoryanti te para. He can go back to the spiritual world. So how many of us right now clearly see the difference between our body and our cells. Silence. No, so it's not so easy. Therefore, the whole process is explained in the Bhagavad-gita. And the main one, of course, is becoming convinced that we're the servant of Krishna, and utilize the body in Krishna's service and chant Hare Krishna. Then it's expected that gradually we'll understand what this is all about. Not just understand, we'll actually realize that we're not the body, nor the mind. And then we'll become fully engaged in Krishna's service, because there won't be anything else to do except to serve Krishna. When we realize that the body is simply made out of the three modes of material nature, meant to gratify the senses, and that there is, as Nanyam Gunevyas Kartaram Drashteva Nupashati, Gunevyas Chaparam Veti Madbhavam Sodigachati. When one sees that there's nothing beyond the three modes of material nature, one properly sees that in all activities no other performer is at work than the modes of nature, and knows the Supreme Lord who is transcendental to all these modes, attains my spiritual nature. So seeing in Bhagavad-gita is very important. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of verses about seeing. So we have to see through the eyes of Scripture, and then work accordingly, according to the scriptural vision, rather than work according to our current vision. According to our current vision, who knows what we're going to do? But scriptural vision, intelligence, then we can actually make some progress, or it says activities performed in knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. So if we work in knowledge, then gradually we'll obtain real knowledge, real experience in Krishna consciousness. And if we don't, then we'll simply change from one material mode of nature to the next. Therefore, it's interesting to go through the Bhagavad-gita and try to see every time it says see through the eyes of vision, or anyone know another verse which talks about seeing? What is Ukramantam Siddhim Vapi Bunjana Nagunandvita Vimudonan Pashanti Pashanti Jnana Chakshusha. What does that mean? Ukramantam Siddhim Vapi Bunjana Vaganandvita Vimudanan Pashanti Pashanti Jnana Chakshusha. The foolish, they cannot understand how the living entity quits his body, or what kind of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But those whose eyes are trained with knowledge can see all this clearly. So we're trying to train our eyes with knowledge. Pichet asipavebhya sarvebhya pakrita maha sarvam jnana pranevaiva rijinam santarishiti. Even if you consider the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of material miseries. And how to get that transcendental knowledge? Tadvidi pranipatena pari prashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge of you because they have seen the truth. That's why it's so important to train our eyes so we don't need glasses anymore. So we can see the truth. We can't. Of course, one devotee who wears glasses was giving class one time, and someone came and said, "You told me this man is perfect, but I can see he's wearing glasses. How can he be perfect?" And then he left. So this is not material vision, it's spiritual vision. And that's what Bhagavad-gita is a lot of it is about developing spiritual vision so we can act spiritually. Therefore, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion the path of Krishna consciousness is undoubtedly difficult. Therefore, the Lord advises us to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line of disciple succession of the Lord Himself. No one could be a bona fide spiritual master by manufacturing his own process as the fashion of foolish men. The Lord says, Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Supreme Lord. Therefore, blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. Actually, that's not even right. Therefore, mental speculation, dry arguments cannot lead one on the path, nor by independent studies of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master in the line to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One should be able to pass the test of the spiritual master, and when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual knowledge. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should not only hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. The spiritual master is by nature very kind to the disciple, and when the disciple is always submissive and is ready to render service, then the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. So that's the process. If you didn't hear that, I'll repeat it. Anyhow, I'll stop there. Any questions or comments? One has to pass the test of the spiritual master. That's called tapasya. Tapasya brahmacharyena samena cha damena cha. Tapasya. Tapo divyam putraka yena sadvam. That one should perform divine tapasya. That's why Prabhupada especially appreciated going out and distributing books in all kinds of circumstances, because you have to learn tolerance. Have anyone here ever had a day where everyone you approached told you how fortunate they were to have your association? And then if they could just walk you over to the ATM machine that they could withdraw all the Lakshmi and give it to you. Has anyone ever had that experience? Probably not. Therefore, sometimes even people they don't appreciate what we're doing, believe it or not. So we have to tolerate. Yes. Okay, ask the question. Does it work?
Hare Krishna. So Maharaj said that if we do not serve and satisfy the spiritual master, our inquiries will not we will not get the blessings of the spiritual master to understand the topics, to understand the knowledge. This is like the test we need to pass. We have to show our sincerity. Is this what, if I understand correctly?
Should I repeat the whole thing again? The satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master Well, one has to blind following. The path of religion is directly enunciated by the Lord. Therefore, mental speculation and dry arguments cannot help one progress on the path of spiritual life. Nor by independent books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender. One should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. Satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. Unless there is submission and service, inquiries from the learned spiritual master will not be effective. One has to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when the spiritual master sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses him with full spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. One should not only hear submissively from the spiritual master, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. The spiritual master is by nature very kind to the disciple. When the disciple is always submissive and is ready to render service, then the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect.
Well, it's interesting because I was thinking that trying to understand the philosophy would satisfy the spiritual master, but in this sentence it sounds like, if you are approaching spiritual master, you should actually more focus on serving him than understanding what he's saying.
No. How can you serve him unless you understand what he's saying? The first thing is to hear, submissive hearing and inquiry. Before you serve, you have to submissively hear and inquire what you're supposed to do.
And then the knowledge.
And not only that,
yeah.
The spiritual master has to be a representative of the succession. Otherwise, he won't know what you're supposed to do either. He has to be self-realized. Therefore, the reference is the acharyas.
And then the questions later on, the knowledge you get, it's more deep in the practice.
Yeah, eventually we naiva kinchit karomiti, which is only Brahman realization, only the platform of Nishtha, which is one of the three stages. I mean, first by becoming more absorbed in Krishna consciousness, that comes. We're able to see that at no time are we doing anything while seeing, while hearing, while smelling, while breathing, while opening. We'll know that only our material senses are engaged in their objects and that we're aloof from them. One will know that he does nothing at all, because while engaged in speaking and evacuating and receiving and opening and closing his eyes, he knows that only material senses are engaged with their objects and that he's aloof from them. So we'll become detached from our material conceptions completely. Otherwise, how is it possible to be on the liberated platform, aloof from sense gratification, unless we actually ever understand things 100% clearly, that we're not the body. So it's not like we just grit our teeth and we try to refrain from sense gratification. No, it's a realization that comes through the process of devotional service. Devotional service means that we have to hear from self-realized persons. Of course, those who are hearing from may not be fully self-realized, but if they repeat the same message as a self-realized person, then the knowledge they're giving is perfect.
And we can advance even more than the speaker? I mean, in that case.
Well, if you listen to the class better than the speaker, yes. If you listen to the class more attentively than the speaker does, you can advance more than the speaker. The speaker also has to listen to the class. And if the speaker thinks he's giving a great class and doesn't give any credit to Krishna, then probably everyone will advance more than he does from the class. Because at least they don't think they're giving the class.
Because it sounds like you can bring people up to your level, but this sounds like somebody can even, you can help someone to go above.
Well, generally speaking, the sound that one emanates is according to one's level. But still, if one is actually very attentive and desirous of advancing, then one can go beyond that. Mother Suniti told told Dhruva to go into the forest, but that instruction was enough to bring him to meet Lord Narayan. And therefore Suniti got the credit of helping Dhruva Maharaj become a self-realized personality, just by telling him to go to the forest and find Krishna. So please, everyone can go to the forest, the Trivali forest, and see if you can find Krishna. Just repeating Sunita's advice. Bona fides from the Bhagavatam. What's that?
We go to the park.
Yeah, Trivali Park.
Thank you.
Ask everyone, have you seen Krishna? He's over there on Zervatov Avenue. Anything else? Hvala Grandaraj Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.